One of the things I've always loved about Portal 2 is how alive Aperture feels. The place is mostly empty and most of what you see is just machinery. Test chambers, cameras, panels and random Aperture products that probably violate every safety rule ever written. But somehow, none of it feels lifeless. And I think most of that comes from the little things. So, without further ado, let's start with the obvious one. This is a turret.
Dear God.
Exactly. To me, these things are basically the cute mascots of Aperture's design. They look adorable, almost kind, and then they can erase you in a heartbeat. But still, you can't really stop enjoying their presence. I mean, they don't scare me at first. I kinda just wanna pet them until...
Activated.
So I think turrets are one of the easiest ways to understand Aperture's design language. They're deadly but calculated, sterile, minimal, and effective. And this effectiveness carries Aperture's founding ideas pretty well. Well, Cave Johnson's whole turret pitch is basically, what if we made a gun, but the whole thing is bullets? Which is stupid, but also the kind of stupid Aperture would call innovation. Their soft voices do a lot of work.
Hello.
They don't sound like normal enemies, they sound like someone gave a murder machine a customer service voice. And that makes them weirdly charming until you step into the wrong line of sight. And the funniest part is this politeness is not completely random. Well, apparently, turrets have an empathy generator and an empathy suppressor. Yeah, why not? They gave the murder machine empathy, then installed another part to make sure it doesn't get in the way of the murder. This is why their voice lines work so well. They're not just saying,
Target acquired.
like normal security robots. They sound confused, hurt, polite, and sometimes even apologetic. The game gives them evolved reactions, so they start feeling like little employees who are given one terrible job. And they're not really hunters. They don't chase you around the chamber. They're sentries. They wait, scan, react, and defend whatever Aperture tells them to defend. And holy potatoes, they can even sing. I think that's why they work so well. Aperture can be empty, but when a turret is in the room, it doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels like the facility left a tiny polite murder device to keep you company. And this is not just a turret thing. Portal 2 keeps doing this with objects that should be much harder to make interesting. Even the panels. Remember that angry panel slamming itself? Yeah, that might be sentient. Well, I don't even know if I need that theory to be true. The interesting part is that theory makes sense. Portal 2 gives panels enough movement, timing and attitude that you can start reading them like they are reacting to things. And I like to think them as the arms of Aperture. Not alive on their own exactly, but wired directly into the facility. They move when the system needs them to move. They slide in, rotate, fix broken chambers, close gaps, open paths, and sometimes slam down like they took something personally. And this is basically what Erik was talking about when he said they imagined Aperture as a living, breathing place, with chambers that could be assembled and reassembled. Panels of how Portal 2 shows that. The rooms don't feel like finished boxes anymore, not in the same way they often did in the first game. They feel like something the facility is constantly maintaining around you. What I also like is how they can create both order and chaos. When GLaDOS is in control, the panels usually feel precise, like the facility repairing itself. But when Wheatley takes over, that same kind of moving architecture starts feeling rushed and unstable. And you can really feel that in the escape sections, where the panels stop being like maintenance and start feeling like the facility itself is trying to crush you. Also, some panels have this weird one-eyed look from the front, which really does not help the whole sentience theory. They kind of just stare at you. And speaking of things staring at you, Aperture also has literal cameras everywhere. Well, the cameras are small, but they change the whole feeling of a test chamber. Without them, it's just an empty puzzle room. With them, it feels like someone is watching the experiment happen in real time. GLaDOS is not obviously standing there with you, but the cameras make it feel like the room still belongs to her. And if you knock one down, GLaDOS calls it vital testing apparatus. Which is very funny because half of the time I'm not even sure what it was doing besides judging me. But that's kind of the point. The cameras don't need to do much mechanically. It just needs to remind you that GLaDOS is paying attention. And that brings me to boss herself, GLaDOS. GLaDOS works so well because she is not just a robot talking to you from somewhere far away. Most of the time, she feels like the room is talking to you. She comments on what you do, controls the space around you, and even when she's not visible, the cameras and panels make it feel like she is still there. And I think we can all agree that her voice is a huge part of that. McLain's amazing performance gives her that calm, sarcastic, almost personal presence. But the game design is doing just as much work. Her voice is attached to the facility itself. When a panel moves, when a door opens, when a camera watches you, it all feels like part of the same system that is talking to you. What makes her design interesting is that she isn't really placed inside the room. She's rather attached to it. She hangs from the ceiling, wired into the whole facility, like the room grew a body just to talk to you. I also like how readable her design is. She is this huge machine hanging from the ceiling, but it never becomes visual noise. You can still understand her mood from small movements. She doesn't have a normal face. Yeah, Sherlock. But she still is very expressive. A small tilt, a pause, the angle of her body, the way she hangs over you, all of that gives her an actual presence. And then there's Wheatley, which is basically the same trick but with anxiety. Wheatley is literally a metal ball with one eye. That's almost nothing to work with. But the game gets panic, ego, fear, insecurity, and stupidity out of that one shape. And yeah, we have to thank Stephen Merchant's performance for that. Wheatley doesn't sound like a robot reading lines. He sounds like a nervous guy physically trapped inside a metal ball, which is basically what he is. Well, he doesn't really have a face either, but the game still makes his eye and movements do the job of a face. And when he takes over GLaDOS' body, the design joke even gets better. The developers said just putting Wheatley's eye into GLaDOS' body wasn't enough, so they made him look puffed up, like he's trying to make himself bigger. Which is exactly Wheatley. And the interesting part is, Portal can also do the opposite. Wheatley has voice, movement, panic, and everything. But then the game takes something that does almost nothing, a cube, and somehow makes that memorable too. Well, the companion cube is probably the simplest example of this whole idea. It's basically a cube with a heart on it. It doesn't talk, it doesn't move, it doesn't react, but the game gives it a name, makes you carry it, and lets GLaDOS talk about it like it matters. The cube itself is not doing anything significant. Paul just gives it enough context. You carry it around, use it, keep it with you, and then the game asks you to destroy it. It's absolutely ridiculous, but it works. And then when it comes back at the end of Portal 2, it's not just some massive emotional scene. It's just a small reminder that even the simplest object in Aperture can become something you remember. So yeah, the place is mostly empty, but it never really feels empty. The objects are doing too much for that. So maybe Aperture feels alive because Portal 2 almost never treats those objects like background. Even though it probably should.